Hello, thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Wise Content Creates Wealth. You've heard about content being king. Well, wise content rules the world. This podcast is about understanding how you can make and utilize wise content to improve your financial success or your business's financial profits. I am Joseph Franklin McElroy, and I'm a marketing technology expert who has built multi-million-dollar companies. I'm also an award-winning content producer. Be sure to go to wisecontentcreateswealth.com to sign up for my newsletter and get access to resources to help you produce wise content. My company is Galileo Tech Media, a leader in SEO and inbound marketing, specializing in wise content tactical execution. Wise content is content that incorporates semantic science, behavioral science, AI, and data to make marketing content that is smart and that performs better. Our agenda today is a little history, a chat with an industry leader who's going to talk about the process of creating wise content that performs, and some resources to explore further. So a little history. Utilizing content to market is not necessarily a new thing, but people don't know that it actually sort of modern content marketing started in the 19th century. There was an inventor in the 1850s, a guy named Cyrus Hall McCormick Sr., who was an American inventor and founder of the McCormick Harvesting Company, which later became part of International Harvester Company. He is credited with inventing the mechanical wheat reaper, which revolutionized farming. He also revolutionized marketing with content marketing tactics. Some of the things he did was he made extensive use of testimonials and encouraged word of mouth marketing of his products. He created written assembly instructions that were simple and aided by numbers printed on the parts. Things that you get at IKEA today. He created basically the franchise model with local merchants acting as sub-agents and giving them lots of content to help them sell his products. Great after-sales service. He started giving training materials to farmers. And he coupled advertising. This is the interesting. He coupled advertising with a push for product articles that were picked up by other newspapers. And I think that's a key thing in what we're talking about in terms of wise content in today's world. And also, he published his own magazine, which is a great concept for many companies, especially in the B2B space. To be your own publisher and having journalistic quality content that lets people get expert advice on what's going on. He also did things like creating contests. He had live demonstrations and other things. But his revolution was to market from the customer's viewpoint and how every aspect of the total offer can be improved. And that included all the content that surrounded the product, the training manuals, the articles that went out to newspapers that were coupled with the advertising. So, he invented a process not based upon digital at all to create wise content. Now, my guest today is Chris Boggs, who is a 20-year veteran of the digital marketing industry. Chris started working with search engines and marketing campaigns in the insurance space after leaving the U.S. Marine Corps. Right before year 2K. Luckily, nothing happened to take down the internet, and Chris learned hands-on SEO and paid search in the early years of the 2000s. Then Chris leveraged his marketing degree to launch an agency career, which culminated with him forming his consultancy, Web Traffic Advisors, in 2014. Chris works directly with CEOs, CMOs, and marketing leads to manage and improve campaigns, and he's been doing this for 12 years for enterprise agencies, and he works with all people for all companies from all walks of digital life, and from designers and developers to product owners and content owners, PR teams, and business intelligence groups. He lives in Saratoga Springs in upstate New York and enjoys soccer, golf, and walks in the wood with his family and Labrador. Hello, Chris.
Hello, nice to be here, Joseph. Thank you for the kind introduction, and that's a great story, about sort of how, these things started.
Right? We're the culmination of a wheat reapers company. So in the rural America invented modern content marketing. That's good to know, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. So let's get started. What are some of the agencies you work for, and what roles allowed you to most influence their content strategy and creation?
Sure. So first of all, I think the important background is that I'm an SEO originally, or search engine optimizer. And so hopefully people won't turn it off when they hear that, because a lot of SEOs have gotten bad names. But that is what I would classify as my sort of agency undergraduate degree.
Well,
So I
SEO,
started.
let me just say, I'm in the SEO space, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that don't, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of wind out there talking about SEO, but there's a very few people that can do it on the scale and expertise that people like you and I have. All right.
I appreciate that, and agree, just simply because we're old, right? And we're lucky enough to get into this really when it started. Google came out, and this isn't about an SEO fundamentals, but it is important when you look at SEO to think about it for one moment as an introduction, so you understand why I'm coming at this topic from the way I do. And the way that I look at it is that, from Maslow's perspective, you have technical base, and the core is content, right? And not just content that's text, but all types of content that we're going to talk about today. And then what is needed also for SEO is authority in the form of people talking about it or linking to it, right? So the core is to create that content, and I've often, or for a long time, been sort of a proponent of letting the content be the king and guide the links. The links are certainly the queen when you talk about SEO, but it's the content that it has to be charismatic, right? So that being said, I learned this by originally being in-house, and then I was in a small agency outside of Baltimore. A great team, small team. Anita Schott was the principal there, and she was just a really early, really sharp SEO minded person, literally working with Cold Fusion and some of these other like old school ways to build websites. But she taught me some amazing things about sort of that technical base that I mentioned. I went from there. I was fortunate to get headhunted to go to work to an agency in Cleveland that was ultimately acquired by Brulant, or Rosetta, which was ultimately acquired by Publicis. I also spent some time at, so that agency was called Brulant. And then I spent some time at Avenue A Razorfish, it was then, in Philadelphia,
Oh, wow.
right by the Ben Franklin Bridge. That was fun. I was their first SEO strategist, and it was kind of a cool role. And that's when I got to start, working with all these different levels of people within the agency and client ecosystem, right? Because really in the mid 2000s and into the mid to now, SEO has obviously percolated into more and more areas of the web sphere of what you're doing for marketing, right? So those were the agencies. I ended up with the smaller agencies up here. I was chief marketing and operating officer for an agency called Internet Marketing Ninjas in Clifton Park, New York. And then 6 years ago, I just formed my own thing and have been working in support of large agencies as well. I've had projects here and there to basically backfill their expertise from an SEO perspective, but I mostly work directly with clients, either helping them, working directly to manage their agencies or directly to manage their campaigns. So that's kind of what I've been doing.
Cool. Well, when we did a little preparation for this discussion, I was impressed that you stressed the importance of developing a strong foundation for all digital content. So before we get into the strategies of wise content, I think it'd be a good idea to provide a summary of how approaching content with an SEO background has taught you to think technically.
Sure. First of all, I've learned that you should never, consider yourself as a marketing person anyway, like superior minded or having better ideas than when you're dealing with technical teams, right? Let's touch on the human side of it first. SEOs originally were sometimes seen as being, bulls in a china shop, as they say, and barging in and saying, hey, fix this, do that, do this, do that. And we are in fact enabled by Google, for example, and Bing have these webmaster tools that guide us to tell teams that are technical teams, and the larger the organization, the more people that are involved in IT and ownership of the back end and the front end of the website, right? So I need to just start by saying that it's very important that SEOs that work in this area do approach it diplomatically and look for ways. The best way, obviously, to get improvement from a base technical SEO perspective is to work together with the technical team to accomplish changes being recommended, frankly, by Google. Right now, you could argue, well, why should we follow these specific? Google has a tool called Core Web Vitals. It was originally called Page Speed Insights. Then it became known as Lighthouse, which is really the tool that manages what their product Core Web Vitals is. I guess the best way, most current way to say it. This is January 15, 2021.
And they'll reinvent it again next year.
Later. But point is that that's what the base of all this discussion is, right? What we need to do is, if we're going to take the time to develop content and wise content to help to support wealth for either, we'll talk about that later. You want to make sure that that content is not only be able to be indexed, just a simple indexation process within search engines, but that it has a mobile friendliness to it. I mean, this is 2021, and in May, Google is really pushing even more of this forward. So if you think SEOs have been whining about technical SEO in the past, welcome to more coming.
Right.
So point is that technical has to be your base for all this content discussion, because if you're not getting your content indexed, or if it's getting indexed 2 times or 3 times, or if there's other things that aren't supporting it, and we can get into internal linking later, because you and I are both advocates of that and the importance of it from a user experience and SEO perspective. But those are the things that you want to deal with, and there's a whole checklist. Every SEO has a slightly different one, and they're grouped separately, but they have to do with site responses, redirection, making sure that there's only one version of a page. These are all crucial to whatever we talk about the rest of this show. If you don't have that right, you're not going to benefit from the investment in your content.
Yeah, I agree with you. I got one quick, we're about to go to a break, so quick question. What do you think about accessibility? Is that a real requirement for SEO?
Well, I've always loved accessibility, because since in the early, probably mid 2000s, I first said it, Google's the largest blind user of the internet, right? And so the reason, what I'm saying there is that you should make your content, whatever it is, legible to disability screen reading softwares. I think it was Target that was hit really hard in the 2000s for the inaccessibility of their content to certain classes that were in a disability. Either they're using screen reading software, or for some other reason, they're unable to access. So think of that, because you can kill 2 birds with one proverbial stone by remaining accessible. You're also maybe presenting some more of your content to Google and its text browser, and also its optical recognition, audio recognition that's getting better and better. But you want to tag those, right? So these are all things that I think are very important to think about from a disability software perspective as well. So good point, accessibility.
So so we're going to head off into a break now. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about wise content and SEO.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Do you love, or are you intrigued about New York City and its neighborhoods? I'm Jeff Goodman, host of Rediscovering New York, a weekly show that showcases New York's history and its extraordinary neighborhoods. Every Tuesday live at 7 p.m., we focus on a particular neighborhood and explore its history, its vibe, its feel, and its energy. Tune in live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Hey, all you listeners, looking to boost your business? Why not advertise on Talk Radio NYC with very reasonable rates? Interested? Simply send us a message on our website, talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Graham Dobbin. Join me every Thursday evening for the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. We speak to people from business, sport, military, and politics, all around what makes a great leader. The personal experiences of what's worked and, maybe more importantly, what hasn't worked. So that's 7 o'clock every Thursday evening, the Mind Behind Leadership here on talkradio.nyc. Listen to real stories of real leaders.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hi, this is Joseph McElroy back with Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast with my guest, Chris Boggs. So Chris, you mentioned to me that SEO grew and evolved with the search engines, and I know that personally because been around with it as well. And so, at first it was small people trying to get ahead, and then it became bigger and bigger companies and, and higher levels of organization. Can you explain to me how you saw this educated ecosystem and influenced your understanding of content's roles within the enterprise brand ecosystem?
Well, sure. And first of all, after I heard that ad, I got to say that I love and miss New York City. That first ad, it seems like we're so close, and yet I can't get down there right now. So I'm looking forward to the next time. Obviously SEO has grown. Some would define it as a cat and mouse game because there's certain people that have done SEO better than others and that have tilted the playing field for some types of businesses for some time, right? If they own the top few or organic results, some not by even their own fault, right? Like we could talk about Wikipedia and some of the other content behemoths out there, behemoths, I should say it right, instead of in my joking manner, that are out there and that can dominate, sort of content oriented rankings. But really, from a personal perspective, I kind of mentioned before that I had a great opportunity to work across a lot of different teams. And what I was fortunate enough is to be in larger agencies with so many smart people that each knew their jobs really well, but that also were realizing and that I wasn't an ass and that, we could work together. And by I mean the SEO team and the other people around you, right? So I think that you could argue that the whole, digital marketing ecosystem has grown tremendously into adulthood, since 2000, along with SEO and everything else, right? And that includes working together. And so that's what I've learned, I think, the most is by working together with all these teams, you start to realize, hey, maybe I should have been involved 2 meetings ago, right? And that's, I think, probably the biggest thing that I've learned in across working with all these different teams and roles and agencies is that the earlier you can get in and be considered, if you have SEO goals for the content that's going to be produced by an organization, then the better off you're going to be because of the technology that I just talked about.
Right.
You can do keyword research, which is sort of the root of any SEO, right? Is you need to understand what people are typing in. And then so you do that research and literally can bake that into your website's navigation and sitemap if you're doing it at the right time, right? Otherwise, it becomes a lot of SEOs come in and say, oh, wow, you got these great, structures of your site, but we're going to have to tear everything down in order to really make this content more palatable to both humans and and SEOs, right? And therefore Google. So I think what I've learned is that the earlier an SEO can get in a way, the better. Or as long as a company or content production entity has that mindset of let's consider, how this content is structured if it was put into a directory. Let's consider what should be the top pyramid of theme. And then, if you're selling apples and oranges and bananas, I always say, right?
Yeah.
You want that on your homepage, but you want a strong apple category, a strong orange category, and a strong banana category. You're not going to compete against the banana only sites, the orange only sites, and the apple only sites.
Exactly.
Those are the two summaries of, I guess you could say, what I've learned, over the years working with those agencies.
Well, I think
I
think it's a good point you made that, you got to get in there early. And I think anything dealing with content is that, whether you're going to do behavioral stuff or you're going to do, AI or other science, getting in there early to be part of the whole development is important because it goes into the structure of what the technology is and all that. We've been in travel and we work with something called memorable tourism experiences, which is emotional triggers that make people remember things, which anticipation builds those emotional triggers. And so you early on, you want to build in those emotional triggers. So it's incredible to be there early. So that,
that's a classic what, has become, and we again don't want to get off into a whole other tangent, but, social media marketing and the audience to engage, to convert continuum, right? This is what we're talking about, is developing the right audience and engaging them with content, and then you'll convert, right? And that's, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I think it ties into what you just said there, right?
Exactly. It's, the how you're going to get them down that journey to converting starts way early before even the technology guys get involved.
Yep.
But anyway, this, our theme is wise content creates wealth. And, my elementary summary I said before is it's content that incorporates semantic science, behavioral science, AI, and data, and other things, in fact, to make marketing content that is smart and it performs better. What do you think this means to you?
Well, first of all, I think this ties in obviously nicely with the story that you said at the beginning. What is it that makes your content more pool worthy? I think an important thing that you talked about was a push for product articles and content and advertising within product articles. That's in a way also what we're now thinking about when we want to place our content in front of searchers, is that we want to pull them to us, right? Versus push marketing. So in a way, you could argue that there's a bit of that in that story from Farmer John days, right? But to me, wise content creates wealth. Wise is probably the most interchangeable word, I think, in that. Some would say wise, some would say, useful. If you were Thomas the Tank Engine, you'd say useful content creation. But, for example, that word can be changed, right? But content, we're talking about creating, and wealth are really the core of that. And to me, wealth, it means two things. It's the wealth for the website owner or business owner that wants to get people to engage with their content and ultimately convert. But it's also the wealth that those people that are engaging with the content get, right? Because if they're not getting that wealth, then they're not going to give you any wealth. It's that simple, right? It's when I was actually walking my dog is when this finally kind of, to me, became the core of how I would define the term wise content creates wealth, is that it does have to be for both sides. Because if you're just thinking about this as creating wealth for yourself and what can I do, and if I spend $20,000 on some influencer to come and smile next to me, is that going to create wealth? It depends. Does your audience like that influencer, and will they buy stuff because you sat next to them in a picture, right? So that's, to me, the wealth word is so important to remember in that statement, I think, as being a two-way.
Well, I called it wise because you're actually hitting a point that I was wanting to emphasize. Last week, the first person here was a nonprofit. All right, and talking how they became a big nonprofit through content. But the point was that I wanted to start off with this idea that we're not just about the money, It's about wealth flowing in multiple ways, right? Content, sure, I could talk about smart content that'll just get you a bunch of cash in your bank account tomorrow and next week, 2 months from now, regardless of what the damage that content does. You can consider conspiracy theory marketing. Is that really wise? I think in today's day and age, we can say conspiracy theory marketing to sell stuff.
Wise guy.
It's probably not wise, okay? So I want to emphasize doing it in a wise way. And, we're mature men now, we're mature people, and, wisdom may be something we've learned over time. And so maybe we can communicate that. So, in that vein, we were talking about this. What are some of the examples you've seen in the industry level where content strategy is about 100% about helping both sides like that?
Great. Well, first of all, some people would say that I have a bit of a man crush on Best Buy because I bring them up a lot in presentations at conferences. But primarily, and this is, we're getting back into what I wanted to talk about with you earlier, but I stopped myself, which was internal linking. I think that sometimes, this I think bears, you talked about history. So in the late 2000s, people were just like, wow, let's make a content about everything. Like if I wanted to sell printers, I would create a page that talked about how to refill the printer cartridge in that printer, but then I would also create not only a video on how to replace that printer cartridge, but I would spend money on 2 or 3 more videos on how to do it if you're left-handed and how to do it if you're, doing it at night. So it really became overboard, this concept of creating content for SEO. And Google ended up putting a big slap on it in the Panda algorithm, it was called, in 2011 when it first came out. And they really sort of changed the direction of everyone again, right? And I think it was a good thing because it was getting out of hand. And I mean, not to say anything bad about you, but content agencies were making money all over the place, and everyone was happy, and rankings were happening, and it worked so well but it became obvious that a lot of this content was the how to change a printer if you're left-handed, right? And so we really now have fast forwarded into the types of content that are much more streamlined. So that's where I bring up Best Buy. I think that their core strength, and they now, I was actually looking, because I was looking at Graco, which also does stuff well, but what they've done is they've broken off into separate brands like Graco Baby and so forth, right? And we can talk about that. But I happened to see a Best Buy separate brand that was related to strollers too. That's, I can't find it now. Anyway, Best Buy Baby or something, I don't know. But point is that what I love about them is that they have done a very good job of creating their product level content. And at each product level page, they have ultimately unique banner or scrolling, you could call them carousels, whatever you want, but our internal links at the bottom, right? And so they're keeping people on the site. They're giving them, when I bought my wife one of the new iPad Airs for Christmas, I knew exactly what else I needed to go with that, which is a lot more. That's why I'm not an Apple guy, but it's a lot more things, that you need. And that was thanks to just the ease of navigation, all the information that was presented to me. So to me, that content's working great for Best Buy, because if you search for anything from laptop to refrigerator to all kinds of stuff, they're close to the top. And it's working for me because once I get there, I get what I need and I'm guided. It's a classic. It's almost as old as the guy who was selling the stuff to the farmers. Hey, what customers also bought, or you may also need this, but it's done in a perfect way. I'll pause for your thoughts before I get to a couple others.
Yeah, we're gonna move to a break now, but we'll continue with this when we get back.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you interested in having a better relationship with yourself, others, and God? Greetings. I'm your host, Dr. George Andow, for the show A Journey Through into Awareness. On my show, we journey into the awareness that the mind of God is the true seat of our personal consciousness. We join together each Monday at 7 p.m., so tune in on Talk Radio NYC.
You know you have it, the potential for a more rewarding life, a life that matters. But how do you get there? The answer is in a best-selling book by the coach of the successful and wealthy, Ken D. Foster, The Courage to Change Everything, Daily Strategies and Wisdom to Awaken Your Hidden Genius and Transform Your Life. With this powerful yet amazingly simple daily guide, your future is in your hands. You will be empowered to unlock your potential, bring out your true gifts, increase your wealth, and take your life and business to a new level. Get your life-transforming copy of Ken D. Foster's The Courage to Change Everything by going to couragetochange.us. That's couragetochange.us. Quite frankly, there's no other book like this. Imagine what your life could be like if you had at your fingertips the success principles to create the life you've always wanted. Are you ready to live your dream? Go to couragetochange.us.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy with Wise Content Creates Wealth podcast with my guest, Chris Boggs. Hey, Chris, so you were talking about Best Buy, and I'd like to see if you were going to finish up any,
I just wanted to see if I have some more, a couple other examples I want to talk about, but I was curious.
Okay.
Hey, by the way, you know what I thought of too during that ad is
What?
that the Panda update was originally named Farmer by Danny Sullivan. So you were talking about farmers earlier. So anyway,
All right.
going along here.
Yeah. So you had some examples of more of a, people.
Yeah, sure. Did you have anything you wanted to add on Best Buy or anything like that, or no?
Oh, no. You talk about those pages, product pages, providing real value and not just upselling. Anything that might be upsold, I think, is important. So you create pages that have that the user gets value from. It is not just for SEO. Is really incredibly important. Whether that's in product or like in room sales, things like that. Just throwing anything at the user in the upsell process. Not knowing anything about them. Trying to sell a family vacation plan to a person who's just entered in one person coming is not being very engaging. So it's a good point you made about that.
Thank you. And I think that the elephant in the room that we should get to in a minute is reviews, because obviously, content, you want to talk about the content that probably drives the most economics right now is reviews, right? And so if you can get reviews and you host them well, it can give you wealth, and as long as the reviews are good, and it's obviously what a lot of people are talking about, and maybe we'll get off on that in a minute to that topic, because it's obviously a very important subtopic of content, because it's user generated content, right? And again, we could talk another hour about that probably, but if another type of content is informational content, right? And I think Paycor does a good job of ranking for terms like, minimum wage in Tennessee. Are companies required to pay out PTO? So that's an example. And then if you look at Paycor, they have a resource center, right? And they've done a good job optimizing that. There's dozens of other very well-performing sites that have leveraged resource centers to gain rankings, and certainly post Panda, Google has shown willingness, and even though they're theoretically, or you can see in some testing currently again in January 2021, where they're pulling away a little bit from this question and answer type. When somebody searches something, Google will say, people also ask, right? And then so people started writing a lot of that content for that, and it has been useful. In fact, I've guided from a brand perspective. If you have a brand search and that comes up, you should probably be thinking about writing content to answer every one of those questions, right?
And doing FAQ schema.
I think that's still exactly. So that's still, you know, even though Google continues to shift and evolve, that type of content, if you're going to talk to probably only if you're talking about SEO, right? Because, and if you're really understanding what searches are happening for both your brand as well as non-branded searches that are related to your products and services, right? So point is that, you know, the resource center over at Paycor does a good job, I think, of grabbing a lot of number one or what are called featured snippet rankings that are actually even further separated from the search results and featured, right? And some would argue that that's not the best thing to get because then people get the answer right there on the search result and they never leave. Again, a whole other topic to talk about. The last one that I would want to bring up, I think, is Zales. They've done, and just because they're in a similar, I think, vein as Best Buy, but on the jewelry side. And the reason that I want to bring them up, though, more than the fact that they've done a good job at getting a lot of product level rankings and some category rankings mixed in, is that, you know, 10, 15 years ago, in the height of pre-Panda SEO, if you didn't have a page on your jewelry site that said the 4 C's of diamonds are color, cut, clarity, and I'm forgetting it. It's been too long since I've worked in jewelry, I guess. Anyway, but those used to be like, you had to have that in order to rank, and that was helping rank. Now, you know, we could, I mean, I'm wondering what your thoughts are, because I think it's still important, but what's more important is a ring sizer, right? That's a piece of content that's
it's an engagement. It's engagement. Yeah. So, you know, I think that engagement is more important than having all the right content. I mean, basically you're talking about where they're looking for, well, content that's important and authoritative for this also has content that on their site or on the page about this as well, right?
Yep.
And if you don't have that, then maybe you're not as important. But I think ranking factors of engagement and things like ring sizer, things that keep them on the page, is more important than that information. I agree with you on that. Yeah.
That's a double wealth piece of content right there, right? And that's, again, now we get into, you know, so should every jeweler have a ring sizer if they want to compete with sales, right?
Yeah.
Or should every financial institution have a mortgage calculator? They probably have one, thanks to SEOs in 2008 or whatever. But, you know, that was what that was back then. And now if you don't have a calculator, then it seems kind of maybe weird that you don't, right? So almost like what used to be, I think, extra valuable opportunities for content that were driven by SEOs and expanding these education centers on the websites and the resource centers. Those are almost becoming like, you know, you could argue that it's like a college degree versus a high school degree, right?
Yeah.
That you'd have to have a high school degree and you're okay, but now it's almost like you have to have a college degree. Well, in a way, you could, I think, equate website content and understanding what your competitors have, and at the level of you know, competition that you exist, if you're a sales competing versus other huge mega jewelers, or if you're just Joe down the road that wants to get more people into their restaurant, right? I mean, this can definitely, we're talking at big scale here, but all this stuff can be talked about at a smaller scale too, I think, Joseph.
Yeah, I think that, you know, people could even, you know, create, you know, simple Google Sheets that, you know, or something. There's ways to, you know, right now I'm forgetting, but you can create simple things on your site to do calculations, you know, just to keep people there for a few minutes, few seconds extra, things that are unique to your industry. You know, I think that if your industry gets saturated with something like mortgage calculators, you need to be thinking of something else.
Yep.
Right? Because, you know, people will, you know, they're not going to just come to your page. They're going to come to other people. They've probably already done the mortgage calculator.
But it's probably, you know, to my point, it's probably like important to have the mortgage.
You probably should have it, yes, but you probably should have something else that tickles their fancy even more.
That makes it better.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe one that like directly gets to tie into their own bank account. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there you go. Or yeah.
And you just have to add your social security number too to really.
Or brings in real live brings in live quotes, or or whatever. It's there's or gives you advice as you're doing it, and say, well, you shouldn't put that number in. You should do this.
Yeah, right. What is this?
Whatever things that make it better. All right, cool. Well, how about content ideas you shouldn't be doing now?
Well, we just talked about some that you'd have to weigh whether or not they're still valuable, right? Are they antiquated concepts? The idea of printing out, having a separate version of your recipe for printer friendly. It might, but I would suggest that more and more of the audiences are just using their screen or their iPad or something in the kitchen, right? So, things like that, the type of content that you want to add that becomes audience friendly, has to evolve too, right? And so maybe instead of printer friendly, you want something that is in a way so that the person doesn't have to keep scrolling on the recipe. They can have the items on the left and the first couple steps on the right, at least, right? Because usually in the first couple steps, you're scrolling back up to look for how much dang butter to put in it, right? So things like that, like little ideas, I think, to help improve. So a couple things that are time to retire. When we have to look back to SEO here again. There's a concept known as query deserves freshness. Yeah. If you have a new French onion soup recipe, good luck getting it ranked, right? Because that is a term that really Google doesn't think deserves freshness in terms of like how many new French onion soup recipes, how many people are talking about at this point about French onion soup recipes. So you're going to have a tough time if your goal is to rank #1 for French onion soup recipe, especially if you're a new site that doesn't rank for any other recipes, right? And there's people that want to go out there and just use recipes as their foothold into some fitness or health type areas or whatever. And it's a very crowded space. So again, what can you do to make your recipe different, right? So I talked about the other time to retire content is if you're creating videos that you're only doing it or content that you're only doing it for SEO, you got to go look and see what the engagement metrics on the content is. It's great. Oh, wow. I'm an SEO. I can say, oh, look, I got this article ranking now for 40 different terms. It's awesome. Well, how much traffic are they getting? And what's happening to that traffic? Is the traffic going on further into the site? Are they reaching goals that you want? Or are we getting back into the pre-Panda days of developing traffic just for traffic that just comes and reads something and goes away, right? And that's not, that's to me, the crux of creating bad content or time to retire is more the strategy than the particular content.
So, we've talked a little bit about the aspects of it. One of the things I think that you're the great expert in is the process that companies need to go through, in developing their processes, advising on, what they should do, auditing and things like that. So what would be your top considerations if your assignment was to help guide the creation of wise content for an organization?
Well, first of all, a solid understanding, you could approach this in like any classic digital marketing development process of define, design, build, launch, right? Mm-hmm. And so the define is really important because, and I know that I got to keep this a little short here.
We can finish up after the break. Yeah.
Okay, but so I think that in the definition stage is the most important part to not only think about what I call inside baseball and how you think about your products and stuff. And it's very easy, especially if you're surrounded by yes people or the larger and larger organization, to get too narrowly focused around what your product is and what it should be called and what people search for it. Long-term care is a great example. People search for long-term care insurance, not LTC, but every long-term care insurance person I've ever talked to says they want to rank first for LTC. So, that's a very minute, granular example, but understanding, what it is that people are going to be searching for that are part of your target audience is, the foundation. And then if we want to take a break,
we'll finish it. Yeah, we're going to take a break now. Yep.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Are you a small business trying to navigate the COVID-19 related employment laws? Hello, I'm Eric Sauber, employment law business law attorney and host of the new radio show, Employment Law Today. On my show, we'll have guests to discuss the common employment law challenges business owners are facing during these trying times. Tune in on Tuesday evenings from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Do you run or are ready to open your own business? Hi, I'm Jeremiah Fox. I've been operating and opening small business for the last 25 years, and I'm the host of the new show, The Entrepreneurial Web. Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern Time for insights and stories on the nuances of running small business right here on Fridays at noon, talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, this is Joseph Franklin McElroy with the podcast Wise Content Creates Wealth with my guest, Chris Boggs. So, Chris, we were talking about define, design, build, and launch sequence for a content.
And the top consideration, right? And so I kind of merged those two topics a little bit already.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's the type of content that they want. And that's really one of the top considerations, so that when you're building out your content calendar, you can think about the different legs. You yourself, Joseph, will use this exact interview that we're doing right now in other ways, right? And in social, or as you'll use the Zoom part of the recording. So understanding how and why to use different kind of content is based on understanding both your audience and your competitors. I've found, especially if you're out of like the ego range, sometimes competitors will spend and do stuff because they just want to sell more tires than the guy down the road. So you got to think about how people and their mentality is when you're doing competitive research sometimes, and understand why people are spending money. Is it more ego driven, or is it based on sound marketing science? And a lot of times, if you're obviously at the bigger end of the spectrum of organizations, that is what you're going to be looking at. And so
and most of these big organizations, they get an ego about what they do, and they don't even know the language that their customers talk.
That good point. But to my point was understanding where they're spending, right? And what they're spending on the type of content. And if they're spending on creating these nice, rich internet applications or podcasts or short videos to explain how to do things, and they seem to be popular, which there's all kinds of tools out there. I don't need to tell you or advocate any particular ones, but there's great tools out there that can help to identify, what your competitors are doing and spending, and then just spend the time.
Can you give an example of a tool like that?
Pardon? Oh, yeah. So SEMrush or SEMrush, depending on how you like to call it, is one. SpyFu, Search Monitor, those are ones that are sort of on the SEO side of things. Obviously, there's tools that are more display advertising oriented or paid media oriented specific. And then there's, super expensive tools, as it were, in our space, the conductors and the bright edges and although Search Metrics sent me an email saying that they're less expensive now. So, it's stuff like that, right? So there's a lot of tools out there that can give you a lot of access to different information on what kind of content people are producing and spending. So to me, if the top consideration is to understand what what your competitors are doing, as every bit as much as what your audience wants, right? And it seems like it's a simple answer, but it's not, because you got to spend the time, because otherwise, if you just start creating content, it's going to be not planned and non-strategic. The other thing that I would guide there is to always, whenever you create a content plan, is to leave room, because you never know when some huge story is going to happen in your industry that you need to put out content about, right? And that's another thing that I've learned about SEO is if something is being talked about in your industry and you're not talking about it, that's one way that you're going to be dropping behind your competitors a little bit. To me, understanding that content, what the audience wants, and also being able to generate and put it out as quickly as possible if that content is going to be important news or information that's current and deserves freshness, right?
Well, I think that we could do a lot of talking, but I want to give you some time to actually talk about your practice, and then a little bit about what your practice, what is it you do for companies specifically, and then finish up with how people can look into what you're doing and get and find out further. Yeah.
Well, what it seems like, a lot of people know me for SEO, and certainly I wrote for a long time, and I've taken a hiatus, but I'm planning on writing again this year. So you can keep an eye out for some of my topics. But in recent years, I continue to speak at conferences, and I've really been focused on paid media a lot more. Because of, we all like to do as much as we can to stay current. And it's been kind of exciting in the paid search space in Google over the last few years as they've evolved their technology. And to me, what I'm really focused on right now is helping clients to leverage Google's AI to a certain degree, right? And I think that a lot of people right now, we're in an area, or an era, I think is the better word, where there's a lot of zealous attempts, I believe, by Google to take over a lot of parts of your paid media marketing, specifically Google Ads. It used to be called Google AdWords. So without getting into the granular, what I do is I deal with people and specifically within their campaigns, understanding the exact places their ads are showing up if they're doing display ads, understanding the exact keywords that their ads are showing up for when Google continues to take away a lot of insight and also expands what they're calling is understanding and AI to include more keywords. So let's say you bid on the term, Ferrari service or something, for example. It used to be that if you bid it on Ferrari service and you bid it what's called an exact match in search, that's all your ad would show up. But Google has over the years decided that in their infinite wisdom that somebody who's searching red Ferrari might actually need service, so they'll serve your ad, right? So without spending this whole last 8 minutes bashing on Google, what I do is a lot of and for a while I wasn't even talking to the Google reps of these people, but now I've started to talk to them, and a lot of times they're like, oh, okay, then they back off. So there's people that are in between the need for the AI, people that have 10, 15 less conversions per week, that shouldn't be leveraging what's in the ad system. So that's an answer for what I do.
I think your website is
general about it. That's one of my daily things that I do.
And what's your website again?
Help people save
What's your
money.
website again?
Oh, my website is webtrafficadvisors.com. You can find me at Boggles, Boggles on Twitter.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll be doing some writing, so keep an eye out. And
well, I'll be there. I'll be looking for you. We should do this again. We got a lot to talk about.
It's been fun.
So I just want to finish up. Galileo Tech Media, my company, actually works with Chris, and consultants consultants and him. And we produce the smart content that they decide might need to be needed. And we imbue it with the semantics and behavioral science and AI and data that helps it perform better. And we can do it to scale. Last year alone, well, the year before last, this last year wasn't a great year for anybody, was 40,000 pieces of content that we did for just one client. So we can do it smart and we can do it on scale. Go to GalileoTechMedia.com to get more information about it. Sign up for the newsletter at the bottom of the site. I'm going to be launching WiseContentCreatesWealth.com website just to have a page with all the links relevant to this and have a newsletter specific to this podcast for people to see. And next week, we're going to talk about Wise Content and Amazon, which will be also, we'll have our consultant Luke Tierney here to talk about that. He's an expert in Amazon paid and SEO and content and how to get products to sell on Amazon. We have a lot of great integrations with that as well using Schema. That's some tricks that not many people use. So we'll be revealing some of that. And then, in February, we will follow that up with an Amazon SEO seminar. So come in next week to find out about that seminar as well. It'll be free to people to sign up. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week. Thank you, Chris. And this has been our podcast for this week.